The galaxy had forgotten Earth. Or perhaps, it had chosen to forget. 500,000 years had passed since humanity's last transmission. 500,000 years since the Sarah Empire, in its sweeping hunger for dominance, erased Earth from every stellar chart. Official history called it a necessary purge. Unofficial whispers, the ones spoken in hushed tones in shadowed corners of alien ports, called it something else entirely, a mistake. The Sarah Empire, in its arrogance, assumed that the human species had been eliminated. That the burning of our homeworld and the scattering of our colonies had been enough to end us. The stars moved on. Empires rose and fell. Trade networks shifted. Wars were fought and forgotten. And humanity disappeared. But the truth was stranger. We had not been destroyed. We had been waiting. Across those millennia, the Sarah Empire expanded without challenge. They became complacent, convinced that no force could rival their fleets. Entire civilizations bent knee at the sight of their banners. Their records, their propaganda, all reinforced a singular truth: no race had ever recovered from annihilation. But in the hidden cold between the stars, humanity endured. The survivors were few, scattered among forgotten systems, living under false identities, their human origins disguised behind modified genomes and artificial markers. They integrated into alien societies, worked in their factories, fought in their wars, all while passing knowledge in secret, generation after generation. Our greatest weapon wasn't our ships. It wasn't our weapons. It was patience. For 500,000 years, we studied the galaxy. Its trade routes. Its political fractures. Its wars. We learned every language, every cultural weakness, every strategic blind spot. By the time humanity was ready to return, we no longer resembled the species the Sarah Empire had once tried to erase. We were quieter. Smarter. And infinitely more dangerous. The counterattack didn't begin with a fleet. It began with whispers. In the central markets of Sarah space, rumors spread of mysterious attacks on isolated outposts. Not invasion, just disappearance. Stations found drifting, systems gone silent, cargo haulers missing without trace. Merchants complained of sudden shortages in critical alloys. Military production slowed. Factions within the empire bickered, blaming one another. And all the while, humanity remained unseen. Our ships, sleek, dark, and shielded from every known detection grid, never appeared on scanners. Our weapons left no familiar energy signature. And when we struck, we never struck twice in the same place. The galaxy assumed it was pirates. They were wrong. Every move was calculated, not for immediate gain, but for fear. We sabotaged their shipyards, not to cripple them entirely, but to delay repairs, to make their admirals doubt their own supply chains. On certain worlds, we left messages, in languages long dead, on surfaces only humans would know how to carve, knowing the Sarah archivists would recognize them. We wanted them to remember us. We wanted the thought to take root: what if humanity is still out there? The Harari, a neutral and ancient race known for their obsessive record-keeping, watched our return with quiet unease. They didn't warn the Sarah Empire, but neither did they support us. Instead, they delivered a cryptic message to one of our hidden listening posts: "You awaken an old war. One that did not end with your exile. Be wary, the architects watch still." The name meant nothing to most of us. But among our oldest archives, preserved in fragments from the pre-diaspora era, there were vague references to an ancient intelligence, one that had interfered in the shaping of galactic civilizations. The Sarah Empire, the Harari, even humanity itself. Had we all been pieces on someone else's board? By the time the Sarah Empire realized the pattern, it was too late. We had infiltrated their data cores, seeded false orders in their fleets, rerouted convoys into ambushes of their own making. The Empire's own admirals began to suspect each other more than the unseen enemy. Still, we stayed in the shadows. No open declaration of war. No grand speeches. The galaxy wasn't ready to see us yet. When our return came into the light, it would not be as a desperate remnant of an extinct race. It would be as the force that would decide the fate of the galaxy, and perhaps, the fate of whoever these architects were. And so, humanity waited, not out of weakness, but because the timing had to be perfect. We had learned long ago that in war, patience was the sharpest blade. The galaxy thought we were gone. The Sarah Empire thought they had erased us. But the truth was far more dangerous, we were already here. By the 6th month of our quiet war, the Sarah Empire's confidence had begun to crack. The cracks were small at first, a delayed fleet here, a supply convoy there, but over time, they spread like fractures in glass. The Empire's propaganda channels still blared their usual triumphs. Grand victories over minor rebellions. Glorious expansions into unclaimed sectors. But those who served in the fleets knew the truth. They whispered it in mess halls and maintenance bays, something is out there. And it knows us better than we know ourselves. Our approach was surgical. We didn't need vast fleets to match their numbers. We didn't even need to hold territory. All we needed was to control the flow of information. Our first operatives weren't soldiers. They were linguists, data forgers, and social engineers. In an age where entire wars could be fought over corrupted supply orders, these specialists could cripple a fleet without firing a single shot. We learned to impersonate their command signatures, to mimic their encryption, to feed their admirals orders that would pull them out of position. A Sarah battle group would arrive at a rebel stronghold only to find an empty system. Another would be redirected into deep space chasing phantom signals, burning fuel reserves they couldn't afford to waste. Every false order, every delay, every misdirect was another stitch in the net we were weaving around them. When we did engage, it was never clean or predictable. A lone Sarah patrol ship might find itself locked in an impossible battle, weapons disabled before the first shot, engines crippled by invisible drones that latched onto their hull and injected viral code into their systems. Sometimes, we wouldn't destroy them. We'd simply take control of their navigation, turn their ships around, and send them back to their own space. With every internal log erased, every crew member left wondering if it had all been a simulation. The psychological effect was devastating. How do you fight an enemy you can't even confirm exists? The Sarah Empire's response was predictable. They mobilized more ships. They increased patrols. They began scanning deeper into their own space. But in their urgency, they revealed something we had long suspected: they were not as united as they claimed. Different admirals had different priorities. Border fleets refused to leave their posts for fear of opportunistic rivals. Regional governors withheld reinforcements to protect their own holdings. The Sarah Empire was not a monolith, it was a web of ambition and distrust. All we had to do was pull at the right strands. Amid our growing momentum, the Harari returned. This time, not with a cryptic message, but with an offer of information. They spoke of the architects, a presence so old it predated recorded galactic history. A civilization, or perhaps something beyond civilization, that had shaped the rise and fall of countless species. The Sarah Empire, they said, was merely one tool in a far larger design. Your war is not the war, the Harari envoy told us. The architects do not act for the sake of conquest. They act to preserve a pattern. And if your resurgence threatens that pattern, they will act against you. We didn't know if this was a warning or a test. But it confirmed one thing. The Sarah Empire was not the true peak of galactic power. There was something higher. Something that had chosen to remain unseen. The attacks became bolder. We began targeting not just isolated outposts but core infrastructure, the logistical arteries that kept the Sarah Empire's fleets alive. Automated freight lanes collapsed under waves of false commands. Refineries found themselves starved of raw materials that, on paper, had already been delivered. Entire planets fell into economic panic without a single shot fired in their skies. The empires started hunting ghosts. They deployed advanced sensor arrays capable of detecting microscopic anomalies in spacetime. But our ships were built with a singular purpose, never to be found. Each human vessel was a fusion of alien technologies, reverse-engineered and improved over centuries. Our stealth systems didn't simply hide us. They erased our presence from the physical memory of sensors, making it seem as if nothing had ever passed through. The most dangerous weapon we had wasn't a railgun or an AI-guided missile. It was paranoia. Sarah commanders began second-guessing every order. Some even executed their own officers on suspicion of collaboration with the mysterious enemy. Civilian trust in the Empire faltered. And then, for the first time in 500,000 years, the Sarah Empire admitted, not publicly, but in encrypted military transmissions, that humanity might still exist. We intercepted those messages. And we made sure they reached the ears of the galaxy. By then, our agents were already positioned in every major Sarah trade hub. Sleeper fleets, small, hidden groups of human ships buried inside asteroid fields or cloaked within abandoned space stations, were in place across multiple sectors. We hadn't yet declared our return. But the galaxy was starting to guess. And somewhere in the background, beyond even our deepest intelligence networks, the architects were watching. We had spent 500,000 years preparing for this moment. But the question remained, were we about to start a war with the Sarah Empire, or with something far older, far stranger, and far more dangerous? For 6 months we had been shadows. For another 3, we had been whispers. Now, we were ready to speak. But the first words we spoke to the galaxy were not of war. They were of truth. It began as a flicker in the Sarah Empire's central network, an anomaly too small for their automated systems to flag as a threat. By the time their technicians noticed, it was already everywhere. Every holoscreen, every orbital relay, every fleet comlink dissolved into static, then reformed into the image of a single human face. Not a soldier. Not a politician. An old woman, her voice steady, her gaze unwavering. We are the descendants of Earth. You were told we were gone. You were told the Sarah Empire ended us. But the truth is, we waited. The message spread faster than the Empire could erase it. It wasn't a declaration of war. It was a reminder. For worlds under Sarah rule, the shock was seismic. Some cheered in secret, the idea of a species defying the Empire gave them hope. Others feared the chaos it might bring. The Sarah were ruthless, but they kept the galaxy predictable. Within the Empire's high command, the reaction was panic. 500,000 years of control had depended on a simple story: humanity was gone, their defiance crushed. That story had just been shattered. The Sarah moved quickly. Entire sectors were locked down. Fleet movements tripled. Every known relay was purged of human code. But they couldn't catch us. Our fleets didn't hold territory. We were wind in a storm, striking and disappearing before their sensors even finished calibrating. They began concentrating their forces in the core worlds, a decision that left their outer territories dangerously exposed. It was exactly what we wanted. It was during this chaos that we saw the first sign. A Harari relay station. One of the most secure in the galaxy, went dark without warning. No explosion, no detectable intrusion. Just silence. When a salvage team arrived weeks later, they found every system intact, every terminal operational, but no one left alive. The Harari sent us fragments of sensor data before locking down the incident entirely. The readings didn't match any known weapon. The space around the station registered a temporal displacement, as if reality itself had been lifted, examined, and put back. The Harari didn't name the culprit. They didn't have to. It was not the Sarah who made the first open move against us. A listening post on the edge of human-controlled space detected something approaching, not faster than light, not cloaked, but moving with such perfect gravitational precision that every nearby star's orbit shifted by microscopic degrees. Our best AIs failed to predict its trajectory. It wasn't traveling, it was arriving. When it emerged into normal space, it had no discernible hull, no engines, no weapons. It was a structure of impossible geometry, constantly reconfiguring itself like a thought taking shape. And then, it spoke. Not in words, but in the deep patterns of gravitational waves. We translated them as best we could: deviation detected. Pattern integrity at risk. Correction initiated. The Harari had been right. The war with the Sarah Empire was only the visible conflict. The true danger was the pattern, the invisible order the architects had maintained for eons. Humanity's return was not part of it. We were now faced with a choice that no one had prepared for: continue our war, risk drawing the full attention of the architects, and perhaps be erased entirely, or retreat into shadow once more, abandoning the galaxy to the Sarah Empire's rule. Our decision was neither. We would not vanish again. We would not openly challenge the architects, not yet. Instead, we would do what humanity had always done best: adapt. We began building a new fleet, not for battle, but for something far more dangerous: infiltration on a scale that no species had ever attempted. Our target was not the Sarah Empire's databases or their shipyards, but the architect's own pattern. If we could understand it, we might learn how to bend it. If we could bend it, we might learn how to hide within it. And if we could hide within it, we might learn how to fight it. The last major strike against the Sarah Empire in that phase of the war was surgical and symbolic. We targeted their central military archive, a facility thought impenetrable, buried in the ice crust of a dead moon. The attack lasted less than 4 minutes. When the Sarah fleet arrived, the archive still stood. Every wall, every system intact. But every record inside, from fleet rosters to imperial laws, had been replaced with a single human phrase: "We are not your enemy, yet." The Sarah Empire's fleets burned through space, hunting us harder than ever. The Harari withdrew into silence. And somewhere, in the folds of reality where time ran differently, the architects turned their attention toward Earth. 500,000 years of waiting had led us here. The war for the galaxy had begun, but it was no longer clear whose war it truly was.